Well, welcome everybody. Good afternoon, good morning if you're in North America, and good evening to those of you, including our speakers, who are joining us from across Southeast Asia. It's a great pleasure and privilege to welcome our distinguished panel of speakers for this important webinar, and everybody who's attending and listening in. My name is Ben Rogers. I've worked in various capacities with CSW for many years. I'm now the senior analyst for East Asia. And today is a really important day for the whole region. Next week, the British government hosts a ministerial conference on freedom of religion and belief around the world. And that will certainly feature many of the countries that we're considering today. It also happens to be today the 25th anniversary of the handover of Hong Kong, and I've, in the rest of the day, been very busy with events in relation to that. But in this session, we're focusing on 3 countries across Southeast Asia: Myanmar, Malaysia, and Indonesia. 3 very different countries, but we'll be exploring the common themes of nationalism, of religious intolerance, and the threats to peace and pluralism. And for those of you who don't know CSW, we are an international human rights organization working to protect and promote the right to freedom of religion or belief for everyone, for people of all religions and indeed of no religion, through our research and our advocacy. Before I introduce and welcome the speakers, just to say we will have a time of Q&A at the end, and I would encourage you to write in with your questions. So it's a great pleasure to welcome our speakers, Salai Zauk Ling, or known to his friends as Ling Ling, from the Chin Human Rights Organization from Myanmar. The Chin people, of course, are predominantly Christian people who have been severely persecuted in Myanmar and have suffered especially so in the last 18 months since the coup in that country. We will be joined hopefully soon by Jo Win, who's a Muslim activist from Myanmar and runs the Burma Human Rights Network. I'm delighted to welcome Andrew Koo, who's a lawyer from Malaysia, specializing in freedom of religion or belief. The Reverend Elga Sarapung from Indonesia, who is a leading figure in her country on interfaith dialogue and work. And it's a delight to welcome Ibu Anita Wahid, who is a leading figure in the Gus Durian network in Indonesia, an amazing network bringing together people of different faiths to promote pluralism and religious freedom. And she is, of course, also one of the daughters of the former president of Indonesia, Gus Dur, or Abdurrahman Wahid. So welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. As I say, hopefully Jo Win will be with us soon, but let me, without any further ado, turn to our first speaker, Salai Zauk Ling, to speak to us for about 5 minutes on your perspectives, your findings on threats to freedom of religion or belief in Myanmar. Ling Ling, over to you. Sorry, Ling Ling, I think you need to unmute, please.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Ben, for the introduction. I work for the Chin Human Rights Organization, and the organization has been monitoring human rights situation in Burma for the last 27 years now. And coming from a religious minority background, many of our documentations concern the issue of religious freedom. And we've been working for the promotion of religious freedom for religious minorities in Burma for the last many years. Having said that, as you all know, the past 18 months have been a rather horrible experience that we've been through in Burma since the military coup of 2021. And you have seen the destruction, the deaths, and the violence and the displacement that resulted from the coup. I want to focus a little bit on the issue of religious freedom on the western part of the country, including Chin State, particularly Chin State, where I come from. In Chin State, the population is, compared to the rest of the country, it's only 1% of the entire population in Burma, but within Chin State itself, the majority of the population is Christians, and we have traditionally been subject to a range of persecution and human rights violations by the successive governments, including under the democratic governments, sadly, because these violations have been part of a policy, a state policy of discrimination inherent in the first constitution of Burma itself and the subsequent constitutions that have been practiced in Burma today. And discrimination is deeply rooted. And we now in Chin State, under the current military regime, a very rather violent form of persecution where people are subject to daily killing. They have bombed and burned down churches. We have documented at least 53 destruction of churches and religious buildings over the past 18 months. And these are deliberate acts targeted at Christian minorities in the country. And we are seeing this happening all across the country where religious minorities are present. As I said, this violence and persecution are rooted in state discriminatory policies against religious minorities. And for Burma to become a truly democratic country, we need to find a way to address this problem at the very root, which is to redraft the constitution. Any future democratic constitutions should be pluralistic and accommodating of all religion, regardless of their ethnic or religious affiliation. Everyone should have equal rights, equal opportunity, and the equal freedom to worship freely. So across the country, we're seeing daily violence, and I think it's very timely that the UK is now hosting a ministerial conference on freedom of religion or belief this coming week. And I think it's very appropriate that the issue of Burma is on top of the agenda, because the US State Department has also came out with a report designating Burma as a country of particular concern, which has been for the last 22 years now. But what we're seeing is the lack of action. There's been many expressing of concern and talks about the issues, but the international community needs to come together and address this issue and take action now, so that the issue can be properly addressed. And with that, I will be very happy to answer any questions you may have later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Zalok Ling, for that very powerful and comprehensive, but also concise presentation on the situation in Myanmar. And of course, I have visited Chin State and the Chin people on the India-Myanmar border some years ago a few times, and so very much in solidarity with your people. It's a great pleasure now to welcome our second speaker on Myanmar, my good friend Jo Win, who is the founder and executive director of the Burma Human Rights Network, and I think hopefully we'll share a bit about the situation for the Muslim population in Myanmar. Jo Win, you're very welcome, and you have about 5 minutes to give your presentation.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. And I'm greeting from London, and I hope everyone's fine. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. Um, I'm recently traveling, been to Burma, Thai Burma border as well, and then traveling a lot in around the country. As my brother Zaug has just mentioned, I totally agree with him. There are so many similarities that Muslim community also facing lots of situation. Before that, I would like to briefly give you the what BHRN is doing. Burma Human Rights Network. We have people working inside the country until now, because our rule from the beginning is nobody should mention that they are working for BHRN. So we keep underground our people. So this is getting very good advantage for right now, because they are still securely operating, continuing collecting data. But we are mostly operating those where Muslim majorities are living. But also we collecting data on the violations of freedom of religion, so including Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindus, all, what situation going on in the country. So I I totally agree with the brother Zauk just mentioned about the churches and the mosque and the religious premises has been intentionally targeted. And now we are also experiencing similar situation that Rohingya people have faced during 2017 during the clearance operation. The same method, the same tactic, the same strategy they are playing now in Zagain, in Chain, in many locations, in Karen state as well. So Burma is now about to fall into the bloodbath, right? The Only the rainy season, because of the rainy season, a lot of things are stuck here. But after the rainy season, there could be very different situation from now. So we have to prepare for the worst, because there will be large number of humanitarian crises will going to happen in Burma, and we are unprepared. And practically telling you is, while my family are under the threat, while they are surrounded my village, my family, my place of where I live, I have no reason to expect anything from ICC or ICJ or anything. What I need is to protect my family. So this is a very realistic approach. We need to do something to protect civilians. I mean, without this good thing, yeah, we appreciate that, but it is not going to protect our families. Now in Chin State, even religious leaders, children, women, no one is spared. Everyone is being targeted and butchered. And I just recently watched a woman has been beheaded because she helped the CDM police to escape the police from the authorities, from the military. So that's why she's being beheaded. And that kind of similar cases are plenty we have recorded. So no, what's going on in the country is terrible, is very bad, but all we are talking here and what we're raising our situation, and we are really grateful, but pragmatically, what is going to help us? We are desperate need of help now. The military is killing everyone, a civilian. Where is international law? Where is international system that protects civilians from their life, from the religious premises, religious leaders? So we are in great difficulties right now to what we do. It is very emotional situation like us. For example, when I see the children 7 years old dead bodies, all her fault is she's a Muslim or she's a Christian. That's her fault. That's why she's been killed. So we need to think about what is the pragmatically what we can do to protect the civilian on the ground right now. This is a very practical approach we need to have. And also we seeing that the systematic approach, I mean, a systematic institutionalized persecution which continue. It is not only Rohingya anymore. This is continuing targeting the whole country right now, right? The whole country is burning right now. Anyone who is against them, they will be targeted, they will be eliminated. So this is not just focused on one group, one location. The whole country is in fire now. So we have to be very careful about what is the situation right now. Is not only stop in one place, but also I'm very agree with my brother Zaud Alia saying about the democratic government, the policy of democratic government, and it's continue until now today NUG government as well. There are so many things we are very terribly worried about the policies. For example, if I said in Charter, paragraph 25 and 26, Charter 1, it's talk about it, the citizenship is still continuing like 1982 citizenship system. It is not different. That is why NUG government is not abolishing 1982 citizenship law. This 1982 citizenship law is the way that give the way to Rohingya genocide. So we have to abolish it immediately. And NUG government is taking time and not abolishing it. And also the policy they are adopting from the 1982 law is clearly seen in Chapter 1, because they are dividing between two groups, ethnic groups and non-ethnic groups. We agree that the ethnic groups should have priorities, they have rights, they have they need a lot of support, but it doesn't mean for when it comes to citizenship, there should be one type of citizenship only. I'm living in UK as a citizen. I have no less duty or less right than any than Ben or anyone else. We have the same, it doesn't matter who you are. This is the legal human right based legal system. We need to have this. So we are very concerned about the NUG citizenship system and laws, all it coming from, because it is also continuing the same policy that General Nevin has established, genocidal policy. So we are very strongly worried about that. And in my conclusion, I think right now most of the young people, those who are persecuted, and those who are from religious minorities groups like a Christian, Muslim, Hindu, all they are now, instead of they are being in the campus, they are now in barracks. This is a major failure and dangerous for our future of our country. We are going to be brain drained very soon. Our education society will be going to finish. There will be no continuous young generation who will lead in the country, education and continue the good work. They all are being targeted, they're being butchered mercilessly, and now they are sheltering in the arms group, and they also have right to protect themselves. So all this happening, what we want to see is international community now need to have a pragmatic approach, not just issuing statements or condemning the situation, or even sanction is not enough now. There need to be something on the ground, because practical protection for the people in the country is crucial now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jorwin, for making some extremely important points, and I'm sure some of those points can be developed when we come to Q&A. Just for anyone in our audience who isn't familiar, it's worth just clarifying that the NUG government that you spoke about is, of course, made up of the elected representatives who were elected in November 2020, were overthrown by the coup last year, and are in effect the government in exile. They're not in government, but you're absolutely right to be calling on them to address the citizenship law and all the points that you've made. So thank you so much, Jorwin. We turn now from Myanmar to the situation in Malaysia, and I'm really delighted to welcome another good friend of mine and a prominent lawyer in Malaysia who really plays a leading role on these issues, Andrew Koo. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, Ben, and hello to everyone who's watching this, and greetings from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. I think when people think about Malaysia, they think of a very peaceful and harmonious country where everybody lives in, relative peace and tranquility, and that in general is what I think we all would like it to be. And in fact, our constitution guarantees freedom of religion, Article 3 of our constitution, while saying that Islam is the religion of the Federation. It allows for all other religions to be practiced in peace and harmony in any part of the country. And also Article 11 of our constitution that talks about everyone having the right to profess and to practice religion. And this is where perhaps we begin to see a little bit of the seeds of problems. There are limitations about the propagation of religion. And I think that's where I probably want to start when we talk about extremism, because beginning from the early 1980s in Malaysia, what we began to see was legislation that was being introduced in Malaysia to restrict or to prohibit the use of certain words and certain phrases which were reserved to the religion of Islam, being the majority religion in the country. And so the most famous word or terminology that was restricted was the word for God in Arabic, Allah, which was reserved to the religion of Islam. In other words, other religions in their propagation of religion could not use the word Allah to describe God. And similarly, in the 1980s, under our then Internal Security Act, which of course has now been repealed, the Bible was deemed to be a document or a publication which had national security concerns. And so there were regulations restricting the ability of people to have access to Bibles or the distribution of it, especially when it was in the Malay language, and especially if it contained, as I said earlier, the use of certain words and terminologies to refer to God, like Allah and some other words. And what has happened since the 80s? I mean, it started in 1 or 2 states and slowly has evolved. And now we have these kind of restrictions in almost all the states in Malaysia. And Malaysia is a federal system of government, but the control or the jurisdiction for the religion of Islam is at the state level rather than federal level. So we had the different states gradually passing and implementing laws that would restrict the use of these words. And then I suppose we could fast forward to the very late 90s, where there was a celebrated incident of a young Malay woman by the name of Lina Joy, who wanted to convert from Islam to Christianity. And she had to go through a lot of bureaucratic hassles in trying to achieve that. And it ultimately led to a court case where she challenged the need for certain prerequisites or pre-requirements from the Sharia court, the Islamic courts in Malaysia, which have jurisdiction over persons professing the religion of Islam, in terms of being able to leave the religion of Islam and to embrace a new religion. And basically what the court said was that in order to do so, she actually had to get permission from the Sharia court before the National Registration Department would register her change, not just of name, but also of religion. So by about the early 2000s, we have in place a rather restrictive regime, and certainly not a very liberal one, which imposes restrictions on, at least in respect of the majority religion, the ability to convert out of Islam, and for the minority religions, a sensitivity about the use of certain words and phrases. And this was then, again brought up in another rather celebrated case in 2009, involving a Catholic Church newspaper by the name of the Herald that had certain pages published in the local vernacular Malay language, and where they quite often use the term Allah to refer to God. And we also had at that point in time laws that gave the government, and especially the minister in charge of publications, the right to impose conditions on publishing licenses that newspapers were required to have. And so again, the result of the court case was that the minister, in imposing certain restrictions on the use of the word Allah on this newspaper, was held to have correctly used or exercised his powers. So the idea of religion, and the idea when I link it to the extremism, which is one of the topics that we'll be talking about today, deals a lot with identity. And I suppose this is where we come into this contestation about identity, and identity linked to religion, and the use of words and phrases to signify one's belonging to a particular religion. And so there is that sensitivity or sense of being under threat when other religions are allowed to use similar words and phrases. And often in Malaysia, the authorities will say, we don't want to confuse our believers. We don't want them to fall into some trap where they are trapped into believing some other religion. So again, it's a very protective, some people would say a very paternalistic or overbearing way in which the government tries to control the practice of religion. And so the idea of the, how shall we say, the adulteration of religion is linked very much with the identity of religion and also then attempts to control it. But those controls can be seen to be somewhat extreme in nature. And then lastly, for this first sort of round of sharing, that then extends to other types of Islam, other schools of thought, which don't find favor or are not recognized in this country. And they are to a certain extent either outlawed, prohibited, or restricted in the terms of their practice. So these kinds of restrictions, I think, on the one hand, seem to be protective, but then I think on the other hand, engender or result in a certain form of extremism in terms of the kind of Islam that's projected, the kind of religious tolerance, or in this case, intolerance that is accepted by the state as the minimum standard for the practice of freedom of religion. And I think that in itself becomes the breeding ground, as it were, for elements of extremism in relation to other religions. So I'll leave it there for the moment, and I look forward very much to having a very good question and answer session later on. Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for that really helpful and comprehensive analysis, and I'm sure lots of questions will arise from it. Just before we go to our next speaker, just to remind our audience that you can, and we would encourage you to please send questions in through the Q&A function on the webinar, and that those hopefully will come directly to me, and I'll put them to our panel when we come to the Q&A. So do send in questions from now on. We've looked at Myanmar or Burma, we've looked at Malaysia, we turn now to Indonesia. And it's a privilege to welcome Anita Wahid. As I said at the beginning, Anita is from the Gus Durian network. And of course, her whole family from her father's legacy, but now I think I know a number of members of your family, and I think your whole family is playing a leading role in Indonesia in promoting interfaith harmony, defending pluralism, and defending freedom of religion or belief. So thank you for everything you and your family do, and welcome, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the acknowledgement and the recognition to what the family has been doing for pluralism in Indonesia. And I'd like to just start by saying that, well, I think Indonesia and Malaysia has some sort of similarity in terms of the outer world sees us as somewhat living in a pluralistic society that is very peaceful, and we live in a peace environment, and we live in a pluralistic society. But if we take a look at from the inside, it's a completely different picture, especially if you're a minority. Indonesia has more than 85% of Muslim population, but despite being majority, the state also recognized 5 other religions, and the constitution actually recognizes that every citizen has the right to practice their religion based on whatever faith that they chose to. But we've seen that when it comes to the practice itself, it's not exactly the way that we have hoped, because what's been happening is that majoritarianism is always playing in place, just like Malaysia. So despite the fact that our constitution recognizes our religious right, we are still limited in terms of the possibility of being rejected. If you're a minority, the way you practice, or if you wish to build your own house of worship, is very, very prone to be rejected by the majority in where you are residing. And that's what's been happening. Not only that, there are so other things that limit the minorities, including the civil rights, such as having some sort of services that is supposed to be for every citizen that is not given to them, such as ID card or health services or even education services, just because they are minority, or even they are considered as a decent group from a certain religion. And what we've seen is that it is because of the growing exclusivism that has been happening since the last 20 years, that is also creating this some sort of a feeling of superiority within the majority of the religion. Now, when I'm saying the majority, it doesn't mean that it's Islam. It's always the majority within a particular place. So if a particular province has a majority of Christian, that also happens to the Muslim minority in that particular place. So this becomes somewhat a common practice across the country, and discrimination becomes also somewhat of a common practice with loopholes in our constitution that allows the majority to reject whatever practices that the minority wanted to do. And of course, this is threatening to our pluralistic society, but also what we need to see is that how the exclusivism is very prevalent right now is because it is becoming very easy to spread this kind of thinking through social media, especially using disinformation and computational propaganda. And what we are seeing as well is how much this exclusivism then becomes somewhat a trigger in creating some sort of polarization within the society itself. So there is this exclusive groups against the so-called nationalists, for instance. And we know that the exclusive group is a threat towards a pluralistic society that we uphold. But also the response towards them is also towards this particular group is also very worrying, especially when it comes to democracy, because the other group, the other polarized group, responded to it by giving permission to the state to take anti-democratic measures, such as disbanding them or terrorizing them. And that is worrying for us because right now it's as if these are the people who are the enemy of the state, but it can be anyone that can receive that kind of treatment. And we've seen that becoming more and more prevalent as well, because now we see that people who are criticizing the government, for instance, can be easily labeled as radicalist. Even though they're probably not radicalists. But this polarization creates this kind of narration to flourish because people were forced to be thinking in a dichotomic way of thinking, whether you are radicalist or pro-radicalist, or you are nationalist or pro-pluralist. And this is where it's becoming very, very worrisome, because at the same, in one part, the number of discrimination is not decreasing. We still have the exclusivity, we still have the extremist groups, but at the same time we are experiencing democratic regression because of this. So now the problem has becoming more and more prevalent, and people are starting to think the way they see things, that this country can only prevail if with the way the polarized groups would think, which means that it has to be the way our group thinks. Otherwise, we cannot survive as a nation. In this way, I think what worries me the most is the way then not only the exclusive group is being used to gain support, especially during elections, but also the antithesis of this group is also being used not only during elections, but also during when there is any public policy issues that needs public support. These kind of narrations then became very much used and utilized to to gain public support. I think I'm going to leave it like at that, and then hopefully we can discuss this further in the Q&A session. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much, Ibu Anita, for that really important overview of the situation. And it's now, and just to remind our audience, please do send questions in through the chat function, because after our next speaker, who's our final speaker for the panel, we will then go to the Q&A. But it's a great pleasure and privilege to welcome our second speaker from Indonesia, Reverend Elga Sarapung, who leads the Institute for Interfaith Dialogue in Indonesia. Elga, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Yes, okay. I will continue and I will take some items that according of our experience of Institute for Interfaith Dialogue when we work on the issue of pluralism. You know, in 2006, I think the fatwa, Indonesia Ulama Council had a fatwa for these words, pluralism. Yeah, that they didn't agree we use the term pluralism because they were so worried with this, because they understand that these words can make a confused, especially to the Muslims. They said that pluralism, according to them, means that Muslims people can make their faith be not really clear anymore, either become converted to other religions or not clear as Muslims. But at the time, I did remember that we said no, we still keep using the word pluralism. Why? Because for us, and we can prove through our activities until that time and even until now, this word actually basically has no problem, but we have to explain what do we mean with this word pluralism. And according for us, this is the moment to explain to all people, also to the intolerant groups who at the time really fight for how we can stop to use this word. And that's why also since that time in Indonesia happened that, okay, there are some groups said that yes, better not to use the word pluralism, but please use the word multiculturalism. Okay, fine. Of course, there's also a theory, a concept, but I think why should we stop use the word pluralism just because of the misunderstanding of from the certain groups of people? They don't understand what exactly we means and what we can prove in practice to use that word. At the time we were in Mataram, for example, where Ahmadis people being rejected by certain groups of Muslims in Mataram, Lombok. And we said, no, we keep using this word. So, and that's why until now also interfere in our programs, education programs with youth, teachers, and religious-based communities, leaders, we still use the word pluralism and we explain what do we mean. And in our activities, for example, since the beginning in 1997, we already has what we said, how to minimize prejudice, how to minimize stereotype, how to minimize truth claim. So until now, this session is very strong, and all the participants also finally they understand what we mean with this session, because we have to be careful. Some they said no, our religions don't agree that we have to say something what in Islamic terminology is zuudon, yeah, to say something bad about others. But we said yes, right, all religions said that in all the holy books, but practically, what do you think about the others? What do you think about Islam? What do you think about Catholics? What do you think about Protestant and etc., Hindus, Buddha, etc.? And it's interesting, they found it very, very helpful session. So in our experience, we were at the level of how to anticipate extremism and radicalism. And that, of course, policy is very, very strong also as a cause of the growing of intolerance groups in Indonesia until extremism and radicalism. But I will say 2-3 examples. Firstly, we are still use what we call the blasphemy law, 1965 regulations, where they're clearly stated and can give us impact to do a discrimination to others, to other religions. And this blasphemy law used also by the intolerance groups to say what they want to say about the others. So the second one, as Anita also said about majority minority, this is also still very, very problematic terminology, which is still used by all people, yeah, where they realize that yes, we are majority here, so we got the privilege to all what we can do. And for the minority, sorry. So, but still the question until now, how strong the solidarity among us, all religions, to face this problem? Because in many cases, I think in Indonesia, if something happened for the church, for example, where are the other religions? How can the other religions work together in solidarity to stand behind the victims? Let's say a church, for example, or a mosque or a Buddhist temple somewhere, as what happened last month, I think, in Lombok also, Buddhist family, where they 1 or 2 houses being burned in, I think, somewhere in Mataram, just about a month ago. So solidarity among other religions to stand behind the victims, yeah, whatever religions and wherever. And the third one is the until now, even the government always said no. Actually, we are open to all religions in Indonesia, but officially, the so-called official religion still there means 6 religions only: Islam, Catholic, Protestant, Buddhist, Hindus, Confucianism, right? Those 6 religions only. But we have actually Baha'i, we have Sikh, we have, even now we have Jews, yeah. So how the government was it objectively to to say that we have to keep going how Indonesia can be a tolerance nations or states. And now we have what we call religious moderation program, right? A moderasi beragama, yeah, religious moderation program. This means that not the we don't need to moderate religions per se, but how being religious in our daily life. In this program, still we keep the 6 religions. Even we use the term, the words tolerance or kerukunan. What is kerukunan, Anita? Yeah,
getting along, a peaceful coexistence.
Peaceful coexistence, yeah, all together. But how can we be peaceful coexistence in our daily life, for example, while the non-6 religions are not there? So this, we are not talking yet about the intra-religious, yeah, like Ahmadis, Shiite, or in Christianities, etc. So, but our education program, we are keep struggling with this issue. How can we, through youth, through teachers, schools, through religious-based community leaders, also, yeah, keep going with these programs and include all religions, not only those 6 religions. Well, this is one of the strategy, of course, not for all, but at least we try to keep that. This is our reality. Yeah. We are now preparing a report for UPR for UN next August. Yeah. So yeah, I think, and you know, also in Indonesia now growing YouTuber, religious based YouTuber. Yeah, for example, from the Christians who converted to Islam, then they have their own YouTube program, or from the from Muslim converted to Islam, to Christianity, they have their own YouTube program, and both of them just fight each other actually. And oh my goodness, I said, oh. But it's happened, it's clear happened. And the question is how the government or especially our religious affairs department see this and understand this, and how to handle this problem. And I think education still be as a strong strategy for us to fight for this situation. I mean education, informal and formal education through schools, from the very basic education until universities, because you know, in Indonesia, in schools and universities, we can find many intolerance groups or influencing by radicals and extremism by media, social media, etc. Yeah, but okay, we still optimistic, and we still have a hope for our common future, yeah, for Indonesia. It's not easy, but we keep struggling. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elga, for that really informative and important presentation. So thank you to all our panel. We have about 10 minutes for questions. And I've been informed that we do have on this webinar some members of the all-party parliamentary group on freedom of religion or belief, the group in our parliament that looks at this issue, and also some representatives of the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. And so I wondered if there are any of them who don't want to be brought up visibly on the panel, please indicate to our tech support. But if they're happy to actually come onto the call openly, we can turn this into a sort of short round table if they would like to. So maybe our tech team can bring them up, and if there are questions from them first, we can go to them, then we can go to other questions if we have time. I'm just looking to my CSW colleagues. I'm assuming that they're bringing them in. Maybe as they are in the process of bringing them in, I could go to a question myself, and I could perhaps ask not the whole panel, but maybe Anita first, and then maybe one or two other members of the panel. I wondered if you could just comment briefly on the challenges faced by people within the majority religion in any given country, whether that's Muslims in Indonesia and Malaysia, or Buddhists in Myanmar. The challenge is that those in the majority religion who are defending pluralism and defending the rights of minorities face from within your own communities. And Anita, you're probably best placed to comment on that at least first.
Right, thank you, Ben, for the question. I think one of the things that we really need to bear in mind is that we are defending pluralism because of the value of human rights. And with that in mind, we need to make sure that we are not sucked into polarization or other sort of types that is very identity based, and then decided that it's okay for us to crush other groups' human rights just because we think that we are defending human rights. So, and that's because that's what's been happening in Indonesia. The so-called group that is fighting for pluralism, they saw that the exclusive group or the radicalist groups as somewhat no longer human. Therefore, their human rights are no longer important and can be crushed. And they allow the government, they allow the state to actually terrorize these radicalist groups. So we need to really understand that, first of all, it's about human rights. The second one, it's about the values that we really want to uphold. In Indonesia, for instance, people got sucked into this kind of dichotomy about thinking that the radicalists have certain way of dressing. They are Muslims with this kind of hijab. They have this kind of beards. They have this kind of pants. The way they wear pants are very different. So they are making signs using something that is very much just from the outside appearance. And that actually creates gap in when we want to create bridge between us and them, such that we have dialogues. It's going to be very hard if we see appearances first and then decide that oh, this is the radicalized groups, this is the extremist groups, because of the way they dress. So we really need to go back to the value of being in peaceful coexistence means that we really want to get to know each other based on their human beingness, based on their humanity, and that's what we are trying to bridge now.
Thank you very much. I see that we have been joined by Portia Berry-Kilby. Portia, would you like to ask a question? If you can be as brief as possible, but maybe just also briefly introduce yourself as well. Over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ben, and to all of the other panelists. So I direct the Secretariat for the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Freedom of Religion or Belief. And one thing which is helpful to our team and to myself to understand is, what would you like to see the government do about all of these situations? What do you think are the best tactics that they should use? And are there particular policy recommendations you would like to see implemented? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a really important question. And I will ask, I think that's probably the most important question. And given our time is running out, I'll ask all the panel in turn to just briefly comment, if you can keep your answers short. I'll go in the order that they spoke. So Ling Ling, do you want to go first? And you need to unmute, please.
If I understood the question correctly, whether what we think would be helpful for the policymakers to do. I guess the first thing, of course, is we see in places like Burma and other parts of the world where religious minorities are at particular risk from all kinds of discrimination and human rights violations, not just on the basis of their religious identity, but just for being minority. So we tend to face discrimination on grounds of various identity. So I would hope that policymakers with the power speak up for religious minorities everywhere, and also not just speaking up, doing yourself is a really important action. As I've said earlier, is what's needed the most, because we are lost in discussing about the difficult issues that we face every day. And when people's life are at risk and in real danger, what we need the most is action. So I hope that whatever power that they have, they will start just taking action to protect people of minority faiths. Thank you.
Thank you. Jo Wen.
Hi, yes, thank you very much, Ben. And I think it is a very important value the British people uphold, because freedom of religion, tolerance, what I'm living here, I can see that, the degree of tolerance here we have. It's a great country. We have so much beautiful things we have here. We would like to share to the whole world. So what I have experienced is it's not enough. We uphold only the values. We also need to help our partners to implement, to copy that kind of policies and actions. What in terms to when it comes to come to Burma, we need British our country more supportive to the cause. We need to partner with the civil societies. We need to support them. We need to support them, policy advice, financial support, technical support. There are many political support need for them to bring this value in the country where it needs most. The country where tolerance, religious tolerance has been several ways, it has been systematically destroyed. So we need to help the civil societies to bring back this ideology, the policy, the value. And this not only can achieve with the verbal support. We need to partner with them. We need to share them our resources. So BHRN is, and there are many NCHRO, and there are many organizations, civil societies are working inside the country for freedom of religion and documenting all this. Look at us, what the challenges we have been facing. The risky environment. It's a very dangerous environment right now, even to take one picture. So these are the support these people on the ground need. And the young people also understand that the value of freedom of religion and the benefit of it, and it comes to public. So we need to also create the media narrative as well. In Burma, 99% of media has been controlled by the military. So we need to have a counter narrative to break this all kind of fabrications and framings the minorities. So there are a lot of work, but definitely civil society in Burma is a very powerful and very united, and this is a group we have to work together with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you, and thank you, Portia, for the very interesting question. I would simply say, look around, look and learn, especially learn in the case of a country which has a majoritarian religion. Look at countries where that particular majoritarian religion is in a minority. and sort of try and experience things from the other side. And, so in Malaysia, for example, we talk a lot about trying to garner respect for minority Muslim communities in countries where Islam is the minority religion. And we say there needs to be equality, there needs to be equal treatment, there needs to be not so much tolerance. I don't particularly like the word tolerance, more acceptance. But then in our own backyard, we don't do the same things to religious minorities in our country. So we practice a certain form of double standard, as it were. We talk about minorities in other countries, but we don't accord the minorities in our own country the same kind of treatment that we expect or we hope that other countries would treat Muslim minorities. So I think there has to be that reciprocity of treatment, reciprocity of respect, reciprocity of acceptance, and not just go for sort of a base appeal to protectionism, to concerns about religion being under threat and things like that. So unfortunately for Malaysia, we tend to look at our big neighbor Indonesia and all the things that they do, like that Alyssa and Reverend Elgar have said, about threats coming from minority religions, threats to identity, the threat from liberalism and pluralism. All this identity politics is linked to nationalism, and we basically say that we are under threat and we need to make sure and protect our dominant religion and not lose our dominant position. So there's a lot of politics that's involved. So maybe another thing that we need to try to do, if it's at all possible, is to depoliticize religion and to allow again more understanding, more liberality, perhaps, and certainly more acceptance of each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Anita, would you like to comment on the question?
Yeah, thank you, Portia, for the question. I echo what Andrew had said about it's more on the tolerance being acceptance of the diversity that we have and just try to live together despite the differences that we have with other groups. But at the same time, because my work has been mainly on the digital sphere, my focus has been on hate speech, hate spin, disinformation, as I said, computational propaganda and everything. I've seen how much people were so easily manipulated into hating other people, into hating groups, other groups, into thinking that that the other groups are trying to get them. So I think one of the things that the policymakers really need to make sure is that despite all the hatred that's been circulated through social media, we need to make sure that the implementation of anti-discrimination law is strong. So I can dislike any group I want, but as long as I cannot do anything that discriminates them, we will tend to be stronger against this kind of against digital malice. I think that's one of the things that we really have to think about, especially in terms of the way digital technology has been growing and keeps on growing. Ben, thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last word to Elgar.
Yeah. Firstly, I will say two things about what we are doing until now is how to bridging diversities. When we are talking about diversities, again, not only those so 6 religions, but all religions in Indonesia, intra and inter-religious. And of course, to create this, to make this is not easy. Every time we face challenges and threats, yeah, because we have to, if we go to, we just have 3 days workshops in Manado and next week in Makassar with teachers, for example. And when we are talking about how to live together only for 3 days, where they have never had before, the teachers, the Muslims, the Catholics, the Protestants. Yeah. So how they can live together. So it's of course difficult, but they are succeed to do it in 3 days, and that's why the activities is not only this one, but we will continue until 5 years. Yeah, and this is among the teachers, and but this just also an example. And the second one, how to bring all religious people, the leaders, the figures, and the communities to realize that we all have the same calling, how to humanize, to bring life to all people through, for example, the case of human trafficking, of climate change. For us also, we are doing some for Papua issues. Yeah, so this kind of thing, I think we can bring all religions to realize that, oh yes, we are facing the same human problem, and especially human trafficking. But next time we can discuss about this. And then I will, yes, some of you mentioned already about the religious politicization. In Indonesia, we are now in the coming 2 years, we will have our general election. So now it's started already. All political parties, all even religious communities, religious leaders also started being used by political interests. And I think this is a very serious problem for us also. Every time, every years, not only for the 5 years general election, but every years, that even religious leaders also can be politicized, can be used by political interest, either that is for power, status, or money, even money. Yeah, and now it's we can see it clearly. And the third one, the role of women. The role of women, we have to bring this also strongly, because when we are talking about terrorism, extremism, as you know what happened last year, I think in Indonesia, the bombers, yeah, also used women. And I think everywhere, yeah, ISIS, etc. So this is also a very serious issue, and we are happy that for our some women's group, like the this coming October or November, there will be the second meeting of the second Congress of Indonesia Women Ulama Congress. Yeah. In September or October this year, and it is initiated by not only women but also men. So I think this it's good, a positive, and that's why I realized that this is not easy, but we still have a hope. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Alga. That's a very good note on which to end. It was never realistic to think that in the space of just 1 hour we would do anything other than scratch the surface of, or just begin to scratch the surface of these issues. And there are so many questions that we could still ask, but unfortunately our time is up. Of course, CSW does these kind of webinars regularly, so we're working on these issues in depth all the time, and I'm sure there'll be further opportunities in coming months for our audience, supporters, friends, people interested in these issues to engage further with us. Before we close and before I thank the panel, let me just say, of course, as I said at the beginning, next week, the United Kingdom government is hosting an international ministerial conference on freedom of religion or belief. And we and many other organizations as well, will be doing a number of side events, both online and in person over the coming week. All of CSW's events are available on our website with information. Some of them will be in person. So please do follow the events next week and participate in anything that you're interested in. And I also just wanted to say two other things. The first is that this webinar, all of our speakers kindly agreed for it to be recorded. So it will be made available, I presume, through our social media and our YouTube to people who haven't had a chance to join today. And lastly, obviously all three countries have major challenges that we should all be following and thinking about how we help. But right at this moment, because of the crisis in Myanmar, CSW has a particular campaign for Myanmar, and we would encourage you to have a look at that campaign and join our efforts to help the people of Myanmar, but of course standing always in solidarity with Malaysia and Indonesia, and with people working for freedom of religion or belief everywhere throughout the world. So with that, I think all I should do is thank our speakers. I know it's for our panelists who are in Southeast Asia, or in Anita's case, even further afield, it's getting late in the evening. So a really big thank you to Salai Zauk Ling, to Jo Win, to Anita Wahid, and to Reverend Olga Sarapung for giving up your, and to Andrew Koo. Apologies, Andrew, I hadn't forgotten you, for giving up your time to be with us. Thank you for all the really important work that you do. And please know that we're here to support you, and we look forward to meeting again soon. So thank you all very much, and thank you to our audience for joining.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.